second or third technical assistance session, number 3, focused in on SMART goals and logic models to help guide folks through the process as they get their applications ready on the more technical side of just formatting your program goals and expected outcomes in a format that would strengthen your application as you get ready to apply. So just as I kind of get us started here, as you know from our previous technical assistance sessions, United Way National Capital Area is proud to partner with Arlington's County to help provide this technical session and support you in your applications for this grant opportunity. As you've noticed over the past sessions, there's a great team working together to help support you on this. And today we're going to focus in on the evaluation side of the application, specifically those parts of it that will speak to what your program hopes to achieve and what the SMART goals and logic models that would be included in your application, but we're going to leave a lot of time for any discussion that you might have to answer any specific questions you might have regarding this. Before I kind of launch into any of the content, I did want to ask how, from the folks who are on the call, generally how they feel about SMART goals and evaluations. So I usually do as someone who works in data collection, I like to try to keep it simple. Just a little 5-finger survey here. All right, so 1 all the way down to 5. 1 being, how comfortable are you with SMART goals? 1, this is completely new to me. I could definitely use the help. I'm very glad I'm here to learn about this content. 3, a refresher never hurts. Happy to be here and hear it out, but I kind of know what I'm doing with SMART goals and logic models. And 5, you're an expert. You could actually be leading the session instead of me. So either if you're on camera, go ahead and hold up a 1 hand on 1 to 5, how you feel about things. Yeah, I got a 3 here. Otherwise, you can use the chat function as well. Let me know. You feel 4. Okay, 3, 4. Okay, great. All right, excellent. Well, that's good to know. And that helps me understand a little bit about where folks are and how much detail we need to be going into this. So this is taken from the overview of the last technical session that really does speak to the idea that depending on the size of your organization, there will be a different set of evaluation criteria applied. All right, and specifically that if you are an organization with a budget of over $250,000, you will be expected to submit a logic model as part of your application. If you are a smaller organization, one that has a budget of less than $250,000, then you can be focusing in on SMART goals. The good news is that if you are preparing a logic model, the goals that you're including in there should be SMART anyways. So this is definitely going to be helping a building block towards the overall preparation of your application. Within the NOFA itself, the grant guidelines, you're going to be able to see the specifics around what you're expected to include, specifically around the SMART goals for those smaller organizations, so under 250,000. They'll be expected to come up with between 3 to 5 SMART goals. And that each of those SMART goals should include 1 activity, 1 output, 1 outcome, and at least 1 metric as it's noted in the guidelines as a method evaluation. For those that are doing above, you would set your SMART goals inside the logic model. I would advise a minimum of 3. 3 to 5 would also be a good number to shoot for, and the number of goals that you set within your logic model. And that each of those SMART goals include the same components. We're going to review that quickly about how you would include an activity, an output, an outcome, and a metric as well. And then we'll dive into logic models, and that should be very consistent and similar to what we're going to be describing with SMART goals. As you guys have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. I do have my team members here monitoring the chat, and we'll keep an eye on things for me as we go through this. And so feel free as they come up, especially if they're relevant to what I'm talking about. So let's get SMART, guys. So SMART goals in general is just a way of designing a goal statement so that it really has the level of detail that a reviewer would be able to see and see all the essential components that they need to see in it, right? The who, the how, the what, the why, all of those different aspects will be included within your statement. Oftentimes, it's the idea that you're trying to wordsmith it into a single sentence, which then becomes a very long sentence indeed. And if you can do that, all the better. Do not hesitate to make it multiple sentences for clarity. It's just a matter of making sure that the goal is grouped together into a cohesive whole, right? What you're trying to do is make sure that if I read your 1 to 3 sentences, that I understand exactly what you're trying to tell me. That's really the goal here. SMART has its different components around being specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. What is really important here is that these are just sort of indicators, right? It's a way of creating a concept, a management concepts to be able to describe the different process. And what that process really is focused in on is a set of questions, right? So that when we talk about whether your goal statement is SMART, we're asking ourselves as the person who's reading it or as the reviewer, a set of questions around it, right? And really around that specificity is around the idea that is this goal have the purpose, right? What is the who, the how, the why? And when we talk about who, it's not just who's going to be doing the work, but who is going to be the beneficiary. Having that information, that level of detail within your goal statement just makes it clear that you are able to give the level of detail in terms of what the program is setting out to achieve. And that's very, very helpful for folks who are going to be new to your program. Similarly, in that if the goal statement is specific enough, what are the steps that need to be taken in order to achieve it? Same thing with measurable. And the idea is that these are the different types of questions, is that if we're talking about a program, a very compelling program to respond to a community need, are we going to be able to actually quantitatively measure it? You can also make an argument for it being qualitatively measured, but it's always interesting to be able to look at the aspect of your program design to see if there's any aspects of it that can be measured quantitatively. And how do you know that the goal has been accomplished? How will we know what success looks like when we see it? Same thing with attainable. Attainable is really the idea of looking at holistically at the organization and at the program to see whether you as an organization have been able to do this before, that you have a history of doing that, whether you have the resources available, if it's a new goal that you're going to be able to achieve this, and that it's realistic for you to be able to achieve it within the time and within the activities that you have set. Relevant is another sort of interchangeable word with the A and the R of this particular acronym, but R for relevant really talks about the idea of where the why comes in. Why is this such an important part of your program and your design? How is the goal that you are setting there really going to be move the needle for the community? And what component of it of your overall objective are you trying to accomplish? And then, of course, how well does this align with what you do? And finally, time-bound. It's really important to be able to kind of help folks get a sense of how long it would take for you to be able to complete that particular goal statement. This is really critical in terms of being able to complete the set of activities and achieve what you're setting out to achieve within the grant period. So let's take a look. Here is the program objective that was provided in this example. And what we said here was that we wanted to provide 100 Arlington School District students and their families with a trauma-informed care program that aims to prevent and reduce the effects of adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, during a 12-month period. And what we wanted to highlight here was that within this, rather long sentence, that we really managed to try to pack in all the level of detail required to be able to convey that this goal has really got all of the components that we just discussed. Right, that first and foremost, that within that piece, you have something that's specific, that's measurable, that's attainable, realistic, and that is also time-bound. Now, above that, as I mentioned, is that each of these SMART goals will have to also include at least one activity, one output, one outcome, and one metric. Those are separate questions within the application that you will be able to point to. So as you go to write out your SMART goal, again, you don't have to try to wordsmith it all into the sentence. You can break it up across these different aspects of it that are specific questions within the application. You just want to be able to make sure that you're preparing at least 3 to 5 of them and that you're able to speak to each of these particular components across them. So first and foremost, we have the activity. As I pointed out here, we are going to be providing 100 students and families a trauma-informed care program during a 12-month period. And up. The output there is that we're going to have 100 students and families that are referred and participate in those activities. So think, for example, outreach and therapy. The outcome, as distinct from the output is being the direct and oftentimes the more tangible components of your activities. The outcome is the effect, right? So if, for example, you're providing these 100 students a care program in which you engage them through outreach and provide them individualized therapy services, why are we doing this? And that comes out in your outcome, which is the fact that what we're seeking to achieve is that 100 students and families will better understand and mitigate the effects of ACEs. That is to say that they will demonstrate and affect improved behavior in school and out of school settings. And finally, I just came up with a couple of metrics that I feel like would be helpful in being able to measure this. One notably being the quantity and range of the referrals that are made through the program to other services, both within the program and outside of it. The number of students and families that complete the program, as well as the number of behavioral infractions that result in the time after completing the program. You could even do a pre and post comparison if that's what you're looking for. All right. So I'll pause there. Do we have any questions at this juncture? Excellent. All right. So with that, I will give everyone a chance to give that a try themselves. So just reflecting on this next program objective. Again, we've identified through it all the components that make it a SMART goal. And then I'm going to leave it to you guys to reflect a little bit and let me know what you think are components that speak to the activity, the output, the outcome, and generate even your examples of what you would use for a metric or method evaluation. So I'll read out the program objective that you guys kind of sit with it for a minute, and then we'll think about it and see if you guys have any suggestions. For this SMART goal, increase the awareness and outreach around this program's services by hosting at least 10 school and community events, addressing potential and perceived stigma related to program participation through educational sessions and testimonials, and promote school community involvement through collaborative events and outreach efforts, all within the 12-month grant period. As I mentioned before, not necessary to try to shove all of this in one sentence. We did it and wordsmithed it in order for it to fit within its logic model, but feel free to be able to break that up into a couple sentences, or as we've kind of outlined below, the point of an activity, an output, an outcome, and a metric. So I'll just give it a few seconds here just to see if folks can think through any suggestions that they have for the activity. Feel free to come up off of mute or to throw in the chat what you think might be an example of the activities that are included in this program objective.
In the chat, we have activity, educational sessions, and testimonials.
We do. We have educational systems and testimonials. That's a great one. Thanks, Steph.
Oh, that was John. I just read
Oh,
the
yeah.
chat.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. I heard your voice.
I think we could add to the activities. Sorry, this is Christine. We can add to the activity collaborative events and outreach efforts at 10 schools.
That's it. Yep. School and community events. And you can get as specific as you want in the level of detail with the questions that are in the application. Again, we wordsmith this into one sentence, but if you want to talk about what exactly you're going to be doing in terms of the activities, that level of detail, if presented succinctly, can be very, very helpful because it'll give the reviewers a clear idea of what activities you're seeking to do. What we mean by educational systems and testimonials or school and community events, you could be a little bit more specific and say school forums or school district related community events, Parent workshops, school fairs. Those are all valid ways of answering that question. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, John. Now, what would we say are examples of outputs as a result of those activities?
I guess I'll offer again. Would it be sort of direct, like interactions with, parents or school community at the 10 schools or events?
Yeah, definitely. They basically, what happens as a result of those events is that you're going to have AC preventions. This will be provided, focus on reducing stigma. And what we're going to see, though, is we're going to see actual engagement, right? The fact that the presence of having those activities there is going to bridge involvement between the school and the student body and the families. So it's going to be increased school community involvement. And as a result of that, you're going to see an increase in the involvement overall, as well as an increased understanding of ACE's resources and their services. And how do you go about measuring that? Any takers? Appreciate your assist, Christine. But if you have any thoughts on it.
They could, count the number of people that they engaged with, the attendance. Yeah, exactly.
The number of events, the number and type of referrals made, as well as the percentage of family engagement. That's an interesting one. You can actually measure how much engagement you're getting before the program starts versus after when the program ends, right? And you can quantify that as well. So that's essentially how we would go about organizing SMART goals within this part. So for smaller organizations under 250,000, you're not expected to submit a logic model. You're expected to come up with 3 to 5 SMART goals, and then these are going to be the components that you're going to want to think through as you kind of prepare it for your application. Now, for larger organizations around logic models, the presentation around this is really going to be a high-level understanding of what logic models are, and then why we're including them in this particular part of the application. Writ large, the SMART goals are a small version of what a logic model serves, right? Which is really around providing a roadmap of the relationship between the efforts and the resources that are going to be brought to invest in this program with the intended outcomes or results that you're seeking to affect, right? So it's really about identifying who is going to be delivering the work and who's going to be a beneficiary of it, how it will be completed, and what you're seeking to achieve. Now, as a person who likes to figure out a way of taking something as fascinating, as interesting as a logic model, and really kind of related to something that is connected to our everyday lives, I was actually thinking about food. And not necessarily just leaving it on the paper like this, where you could sort of take a look at all the different facilities of it around inputs, activities, outputs, and outcomes. But it actually for me, fits in well if we're thinking about the fact that we want to bake a cake. So now all the aspects of baking a cake, my goal here is that I'm actually looking to bake a cake to celebrate my father's birthday today. So what are all the different aspects of it that I'm going to need? And what, as far as a recipe goes, how am I going to pull this together to be able to demonstrate that I have all the resources I need, can complete the activities I need to do in order to get to the outcome that I'm seeking to affect, right? So if we're thinking about inputs writ large, we're thinking about all those things that kind of go into the preparation and what we will need in order to be able to bake this cake. So as far as the who goes, we understand that there's going to be the person baking the cake, myself, as well as the birthday guests. And what are all the different components I'll need? What are all the resources? Not only just the resources of the inputs that we would think about, sort of financial funding or the essentials of a program components, but also like where the program is going to take place, where the service is going to be delivered, what else is going to be a part of that, right? So not just the flour, the sugar, and the eggs that you're going to need to bake the cake, but also the fact that you need to take those ingredients and put that in an oven. You might need a kitchen because that's where we often find ovens, as well as a cake tin and a plate for us to be able to shake the cake and deliver it to our birthday guests. And of course, I also include there that we're going to be able to hopefully achieve this in an hour. Then, of course, the activities, how you're going to be able to achieve it, that's really where you get descriptive in terms of what you're actually going to do, both in terms of mixing the ingredients, baking it in the oven, letting it cool, adding the candles, cutting and serving. So as you can see, I actually have organized the activities stepwise in terms of if I were to have to start this all the way through to the end, just like a recipe, how would I describe it? As far as the outputs and the outcomes, I really just wanted to make the distinction again that the difference between outputs is what is the direct, tangible, and sort of visible results of your activities. The fact that I produced a cake and that cake can be consumed and make people happy. But also the fact that the outcomes of it, which is ultimately why do we do birthday cakes in the first place, is that we're fulfilling traditions and that we're strengthening the bonds that we have as a family. It also gives me the fact that if I'm the one who's baking the cake, the bragging rights of saying that I baked my father's birthday cake to my brothers for the year ahead. So that is the relationship that we have towards inputs and activities. You can sort of look at how they're organized here between the who, the how, and the what. You can think about it in terms of a cake. But I'll take you guys through to show you that within the application, you have a template that's able to give you an example of how you can structure your logic model as well as a sample. And the sample, I'm going to take you through a couple examples right now to give you an idea of what a sample logic model that would be submitted for this particular grant opportunity would look like or could look like. So I've blown up one of the examples that you see here. On the left is the program goal. That's the same program goal that we saw as an example. Oh, no, this is a different one. Sorry. This is around the same program around ACEs. But I took the first line of the logic model, which is really specifically focused in on the referrals and intake process. Essentially, that the program is going to be structured to receive school-based referrals, and that from that they're going to conduct an intake and assessment process, and then connect them to the appropriate resources within 2 weeks of each referral. So you have a SMART goal that really does structure around the beginning of what this program would look like. So it's also kind of helpful to be able to break out your program, and that's why having 3 to 5 goals shouldn't be difficult to come up with, because if you think about the beginning, the middle, and the end of any program cycle, you should be able to kind of structure out a goal in terms of the process of how a participant would move through your program. From that program goal, we're able to break it out into the different components that I've described, both from the resource and the inputs through to the activities, the outputs, outcomes, and then impacts. We included impacts here in case you really wanted to speak to longer term versus shorter term outcomes. That gives you a chance to kind of expand a little bit about what you expect to happen in the near term versus something that you really think is going to take a longer or wider impact across the community. That just gives you an option. It really is how you would like to structure it. We've seen lots of different types of logic models in the past, and as long as they have the essential components there, I think that's probably the most essential. In this example, you can see here from the resource and the inputs that all the main folks who will be involved. So that is to say, school district officials and staff who are considered to be some of the decision makers from within the school around this program being established, all the way through the school level staff who might be making the referrals themselves, the students and parents who would be referred into the program, as well as the counselors who are going to be serving as the provider staff for this program. I also included the intake and assessment to really just sort of indicate that if there are any additional items or materials that you think would be helpful to include, that you feel free to include them. That is especially if you're using evidence-based practice or sort of certified or credentialed type of materials to be able to do it. If there are any sort of processes that are widely known, that's always helpful to include. The activities themselves: receive, assess, and refer students and families continuously through the year. that you set a target. That's also kind of helpful to happen. But you'll see that in the difference between the activities and the outputs anyways, is that even if the activities you are not specifying a target, in your outputs, you really are going to want to try to identify what or quantify to the best of your ability how many folks are going to be served within this particular investment and within this different program as it's implemented within a year, or any time within that year. So 100 student family intakes completed within the month, 12 months. And then, of course, the outcomes comes down to the student family connected to the intake processes, and they're co-building their service plans. That's really the objective of having folks come in and be referred in and then connected with those appropriate resources, is that they're going to complete the intake process, and then they're going to ultimately start co-building their service plans with the folks that they're referred to. What this does is that it also has that larger impact of expanding awareness of this different program service plans, and that school staff and school district officials might become aware that this particular program is now a resource at their benefit to be able to refer students and families that might fall within that need. All right, so that's one example. Showing you a second example, this is another part of the program where you co-develop and execute individualized program service plans for up to 100 students and their families in collaboration with program staff and family members, facilitating therapeutic mentoring activities, one-to-one mentoring, group therapy, and community engagement sessions within the 12-month grant period. This is the same sort of idea. I showed you the first part of the cycle, and this is like a little bit large. This is the next part of the cycle. So once people are referred to, this is also a component of that program. I felt like this is a good meaty one to kind of show up as an example as well. The different resources and inputs are still there. Again, the social worker who's going to be delivering the work, the student and the parents who are going to be the beneficiary, referral materials, which is going to inform the social worker of how to be able to best serve the program, as well as service plans, which may or may not be from a evidence-based tool or a validated tool of some sort. The activities itself, again, the idea is that what you're seeking to achieve within this particular component of the program. And those outputs, again, as you can see, have got a lot of specifics around how many plans are being developed, within how much time. If you are going to be doing a TMP, which speaks to the therapeutic mentoring program, how many home interventions are going to be completed? How many cohorts? How many participants within each of those cohorts? Those are all the types of specifics that would show up in the outputs. Similarly, in the outcomes, you're speaking to those overall outcomes and the so what's of the program. Like, what are we actually trying to do all these activities and have folks go through these particular activities to do? It's not just to be able to serve up home interventions and service plans, but also to really ensure that students and families have an understanding of the behavioral impact of ACEs, and that they're going to be able to improve their interpersonal communication relationships by participating in the therapeutic mentoring program. And then, of course, all of those wider impacts that are going to benefit the school community. And this is really important, not just for this particular grant, but also how you're going to be able to describe to all your funders and all the folks who are connected to your organization, to your program, why it's so important to do your particular program in this particular initiative. All right. So that is the two examples of the logic model. Now, those two examples are actually here throughout this wider sample that we've put together for you. Please don't try to read this. It's very small type and it's very packed in together, but a logic model in its essence is really meant to be read top down, left to right. It is very much a straightforward framework or roadmap that will describe in a concise, usually one-page detail around what you are trying to achieve. It's really a good guidance for your program. So for anyone, not just the folks that you're seeking funding from, but also the folks who needed to deliver it, they'll have a clear idea of what all the different components of the program are and how their activities are leading to an overall change in the community. So it's a very helpful tool to have developed. If you're a larger organization that can build out that capacity to do it, it's very good to have one of these. If you're a smaller organization that can develop a logic model, that's also really essential, but we recognize and understand that that is something that might come over time. One thing that I did want to show over here is the fact that, as you can see, the logic model is basically a system of boxes going from left to right, from the program goal all the way through from to the outcomes and impacts. I did organize this particular logic model to start at the beginning of the program cycle and include those essential components. One being the intake and referral process, all the way through participating in the therapeutic mentoring program and the more specific individualized trauma-informed interventions that might be happening as a result of the service plan. So 2 and 3 really about establishing and then fulfilling the engagement with the service plans. And then number 4 really being one of those, how are we going to engage the wider community? How is the community going to know about this particular program and also reduce stigma that might be associated with participating in behavioral health activities. So that is a way of really kind of illustrating all the different aspects of it, and you can fit that within 3 to 5 SMART goals over here on the left. And then when you actually do that and think through how each of those components come to play, you're able to actually make a linear connection between all the ways that the resources and inputs that you're asking for across your program actually fit in and what they're going to be responsible for and what they're going to actually create or produce. Now, if you're able to get to this type of organization, that's great, but it's just really a good way to keep in mind that as you think through the different goals and how they play out across your resources, activities, and outputs and outcomes, the more that you can make a direct connection between one column to the next. So how your resources are going to actually serve into those activities, how those activities are going to result in the outputs that you're seeking to achieve, as well as the outcomes and the impacts that that will have as a result. That is really how to strengthen your logic model overall. All right. With that, you're going to have your logic model at the ready to submit, but be sure to read through the rubric, especially section 2 around the evaluation that speaks to the SMART goals. Oh, hey, Christine, yeah, go ahead.
Hi, sorry. Can I ask before you change slides? Can
Sure.
I ask a question on the previous slide? This may be just nomenclature difference, but in the way I've used it last year, the program goal that's used on the far left, like that was an overarching goal that explained the whole program. And then the head of the column to the far left was actually SMART goals, and 1, 2, 3, 4 were the individual SMART goals. Is that okay?
Yep, that's it. You're in the same mindset.
Okay, great. So the 1, 2, 3, 4 here are actually your 3 to 5 SMART goals.
That's it. You got it.
All right, perfect. That's just what I need to know. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, so within the rubric, section 2 specifically, around the evaluation, there will be one, depending on whether your organization is above or below 250,000. Let's start already with those that are above 250,000. They will be asked to complete a logic model, and the components that you're actually aiming for are in that excellent column, right? So that you complete the outcome logic model, that you include 3 or more SMART goals, that they are indeed SMART and they have all the different components, as well as including those corresponding inputs, activities, outputs, and outcomes for each of the SMART goal listed. And that there's a connection between each of the goals and its corresponding inputs, activities, and outputs. That you really do want to speak to the connection between each goal and the program objective. Now, that kind of actually speaks to what Christine was sort of saying, is that if your program objective, your overarching objective, is that you want to serve 100 students and families with the ACE program to reduce trauma and prevent it, then you're going to want to make sure that the SMART goals have some sort of relationship back up to that overall program objective as well. And finally, here on the right is the same idea around the SMART goals for those that are smaller organizations, and that they will be expected to submit 3 to 5 SMART goals. That there in itself, you also want to make a connection between the data collection and evaluation of SMART goals, outputs, and outcomes listed. And it says listed in the logic model, but I imagine that that's what we're talking about, is overall is talking about the SMART goals for smaller organizations.
Scott, just to clarify, both of these questions are for the organizations who are 250,000 above. So that first question on the left is the logic model, and then they're also going to explain their methods of evaluation for all the goals listed in their logic model.
Okay, got it. Yep. And then do they have, is the rubric separated for the smaller ones, or is that?
Yeah, there's a second, there's a whole different rubric for smaller organizations, for the organizations that are below $250,000 operating budget. And that's clearly listed if you go to the appendices of the grant that's online.
Yeah, follow your color, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Right. It's color coded, yeah.
Thanks, Madeline.
Mm-hmm.
With that, leaves us plenty of time for any questions you might have around SMART goals and logic models.
And you can drop questions. Oh, I see some folks are typing no questions. You can drop questions in the chat, or you can unmute and ask. Also, if you don't have a question right now, but you have a question later, you can also email us and we'll be sure to add them to the frequently asked questions. So far, I'm seeing lots of no questions and clear for me. Great job, Scott.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. We're glad to have you guys here and be a part of these technical assistance sessions. That's really key in order to make sure that you can present the most successful application possible. And as Stephanie mentioned, we are here to provide any additional information or support regarding SMART goals and logic models. Okay, with that, I will give time back and let everyone get working on their SMART goals and their logic models. Thanks you guys for joining.